constitutional expert, fixture now on GB News, I think, through all these proceedings, a man of huge knowledge. Now, I'm saying to the audience at home, this is extraordinary, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's amazing. I remember myself being in the queue for Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, in 2003. My father queued over that bridge for Winston Churchill in 1965. This feels extraordinary. In historical terms, is it?
Well, we have a set playbook for state funerals. As you say, the last state funeral was, in fact, Winston Churchill's in 1965. Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, had a royal ceremonial funeral, which is slightly different to a state funeral, and can always discuss that if you wish.
But still, we had the catafalque.
Well, we still had the only difference between a state funeral and a ceremonial funeral is that the Earl Marshal organises the state funeral and the coronation, and also the gun carriage on which the coffin is carried is pulled by horses in a ceremonial funeral, as opposed to naval ratings in a state funeral. But apart from that, there is really no distinction. But this is actually really is remarkable because, you know, the Britain we were all told is long dead and gone is actually alive and well and is visible just outside that window. And how fitting, I think, that we're going to have the longest queue in history for the longest reign in history. A fitting tribute to Her Majesty. And that's why I think the Earl Marshal was quite correct not to have this funeral take place at St George's Chapel, Windsor, which is usually where the sovereigns always have their funeral service. Instead, it's going to be at Westminster Abbey. The first funeral of a sovereign at Westminster Abbey since 1760, with King George II, who was the last king also to be buried there. Very important, you can have 2,000 people there. We're going to have 500 dignitaries there, much larger than the 800 who will be present at St George's later on, when there's their final committal.
Yes, and it gives more chance for representation. And I'm very pleased to say that friend of this show, Steve Melnikov, who's about to become 103, he has been invited as one of the representatives of the American forces in World War II, and I hope to get him on the programme on Monday. So, yeah, every Victoria Cross holder has been invited. Every George Cross holder has been invited. So there is a big symbolism. A lot of it, of course, is around World War II, and it's worth mentioning that today is the 15th of September. It is Battle of Britain Day, something the Queen herself absolutely would have observed, and I hope some people at home
it's also
do the same.
Today would also have been the 100th birthday of Lady Soames, Winston Churchill's daughter.
Oh, would it?
Who I actually got to know very well in her later years when I was her escort to various events, and she and the Queen, and I suppose Dame Vera Lynn, all gone now. The last three links that we had to Churchill and to the Second World War. But just a reminder that the Queen's life is more than just the 70 years of her reign. I mean, it goes back to 1945.
Yeah, direct links. Obviously, there are Winston Churchill's grandchildren are still around.
But in terms of
yes.
in terms of the national public connections that we have, very much the case. And you know, why are we doing all this? Why does this matter? You know, Americans and others may say, "Gosh, why is there so much bother?" Well, the disadvantage of having the world's oldest unbroken constitution is that we don't have an annual Independence Day to celebrate. We don't have an annual revolution like the French and Bastille Day to celebrate. Well, so we don't have many chances to come together as a nation. And so for us, the monarchy is actually the focal point of patriotism. The monarchy provides those relatively rare occasions when the nation can really build some sort of national bond, a connection. National identities get forged through these events. And so for monarchies, jubilees, coronations, weddings, the good times, but the bad times of funerals provide those chances for us to unite as a people.
But this is different. You know, I've seen the jubilees and all of those things, but somehow this is different. I would postulate that what is happening over the course of this, and it's now exactly a week. The announcement of the Queen's death came at 6:30 last Thursday. We're exactly a week into this. And I would say to you, we're actually learning for the first time as a country what a constitutional monarchy actually is.
Well, you're exactly right. This has been a lesson in history. You know, unlike, say, the American Constitution, which is a piece of paper behind glass in the Library of Congress, we have a living constitution. The monarch is the living embodiment of that constitution and of that history that goes to Magna Carta and to William the Conqueror and to King Alfred. And we're actually seeing the smooth transition of power, televising the Accession Council, seeing the proclamations that take place. All of this is actually history and the Constitution being played before our eyes like a theatre set.
It's astonishing. History suddenly is very fashionable. Final thought, Rafe, on Monday, on the funeral and the sort of global significance of that event.
Well, we have to remember, this is not just a British event, and it's not just a Commonwealth event. We're talking about a global figure, the most photographed, most represented figure in human history, somebody who epitomises so much that is truly noble in the human spirit, and a real global figure, the second longest reigning sovereign in world history after Louis XIV. This is an event which is of national and international importance.
Yeah, no, it really is. And who knows how many people are going to watch those pictures on global television. Estimates of 3 billion or 3.5 billion, or whatever it may be.